Hello everybody and welcome to Down the Freeman, a fan-made game set in the Half-Life universe that takes everything that's good about Half-Life and throws it out the window. I mean seriously, I played this game for about 2 hours and it felt like a chore, every single step. So the premise is you play as a soldier that supposedly Gordon Freeman beat up in the Half-Life 1 timeline, back in Black Mesa. Now he's all pissed and wants revenge. But I never really felt like there was any good reason for why he's so pissed. I mean, yeah, your guys attacked Freeman, so he killed them. And half of the time I'm kind of just falling asleep through the cutscenes. They're decently animated, I'm pretty sure it's in Source Filmmaker. But just the voice acting it's pretty hit and miss depending on the character.
I heard that you guys have a plan about getting out of the city.
Maybe.
I want in.
Why?
Hey, let's make a deal.
I'm listening.
Good. First, let's lower the guns, okay?
So onto the gameplay now, the main problem I have with it. Half-Life 2 has always been great when it came to pacing and balancing your amount of downtime, your amount of shooting enemies. Nothing felt so bullet spongy, like fucking hell. Every single enemy you shoot in this game, it's not satisfying to kill, it absorbs like half a mag. In Half-Life 2, when you down a Combine, like you can one-shot them with the revolver. And the physics engine just makes it so satisfying, the way they kind of collapse or fly away. In this game, there's none of that. By the way, speaking of Combines, as you can see, this new enemy type in this game is a reskinned, enlarged Combine with really ugly textures and just no real sense in the design. And I mean, normally I would appreciate that they're trying to do something new, except they act exactly the same as the Combine, so there's no innovation in that sense. You fight them the exact same way, except they're more bullet spongy. This section here was the first time I basically encountered these enemies, and I mean it was infinite waves upon infinite waves. I played it for about 5 minutes, wondering to myself how much longer does this fight go on, because it was so awfully tedious anyway. Only to find out that you just need to leave. You just leave the area. And this has happened several times throughout the game. You're led to think that you need to be killing enemies because, I mean, it just makes sense. You don't just leave all these monsters for all your friends, right? And I mean, you want to fight, but the game only forces you to fight a handful of times. Most of the times, it's infinite waves of enemies, but you can just walk past them and instantly skip to the next level, which, I mean, you'll only get to the next level in about 3 minutes because that's how long the fucking load times can be sometimes. And the first time I tried to enter the loading screen, it just froze up. I mean, you can see my health bar going down slowly, but it just didn't load me into the next map. Before I continue, I want to quickly address that a lot of people are accusing this game of stealing assets from all over the place. I cannot confirm or deny that. I don't really have the time to look into that in depth, see if they credited them somewhere or got the license, whatever. So I'm just reviewing this game on the merits of, like, is it fun or not? So with that out of the way, the weapons are okay. They feel okay to use, it's relatively satisfying. Again, I'm not sure if this is some other asset that's been taken or not, but regardless, they feel okay, but they're not as interesting or as diverse as the Half-Life 2 weapons. Also, you know how I mentioned how it just throws waves and waves of enemies against you? Half of the time, no, maybe 3/4 of the time, you're just in this big-ass open maze of nothingness with no enemies, no exploration, no nothing to keep you interested. You've just got to walk and walk and walk until you get to the next area where you're going to be encountered by hundreds of enemies. So it's like, could you not have scattered some of these enemies throughout the level to give me something to do, since there's no exploration anyway? And the worst part is, you can't even easily skip these monotonous parts and get to the enemies' areas because it's such a fucking maze, and the level design is just not clear. You don't know where you're meant to be going. And I mean, I haven't had this happen to me since I was a kid. And in years, I have never been so lost playing a game. It's been quite a while, so that's quite an achievement. And in moments like this, where you're forced to actually wait for something to happen, so you need to survive at this point, you call down an elevator and you need to fight so many zombies, but there's no real strategy behind it. I mean, there's no cover, there's no like interesting level design to kind of move around, you don't have the gravity gun. It's just a boring shoot fest, and it just drains your ammo and health so much. And because there's no exploration, you don't get many opportunities to actually refill on this stuff. It's just like, oh, here's a section where you need to kill 100 enemies. Okay, here's a few magazines, now you're set. And a lot of the times I was running around with very little ammo or health. And it wasn't the fun kind of difficult. It was just a little bit frustrating because enemies don't do that much damage to you anyway. And yeah, it just felt a little bit like, just thoughtless. Like there was no real energy put into designing stuff. You know, when the game actually opened up, the first section after the intro has you actually running around without any weapons, and there was a lot of zombies, and I thought that was kind of cool because, I mean, you're never really defenseless in a Half-Life game from what I can think of. And you're running around this dark place, loads of zombies, you're just trying to navigate, and it was kind of fun for a while. But then they kind of threw it out the window once they gave you weapons, and then that number of enemies stayed throughout the game. Maybe you could get over this tedious maze stuff and just insane amount of enemies and bullet sponginess and all this stuff if the game had interesting set pieces, but it doesn't. You walk through a city, you walk through an office, you're on a train. I mean, that could have had the potential to be cool, but instead you've got this insanely close fog around you, and the gameplay is just absolutely atrocious at this part. So you spawn in the train, you climb up this ladder. I was just wandering around, and then suddenly, the way they decide to give you this new weapon, oh, portal comes through. Like, there's no fucking explanation. What, was it a Combine portal or something? Did this guy die on, like, the planet Zen or something and he got sent back? Like, it doesn't really make any sense. And then after wandering around here for about 5 minutes, fucking trying to commit suicide, look, I didn't even get to die here. The game just wants to torture me. I'm not moving here at this point, by the way. It's just kind of sliding me around. I can barely control myself. Sometimes I die, but I managed to replicate this multiple times. Jump off the train, have nothing to do with my life. And then eventually, a fuck ton of Combine gunships just come by, and this is basically a turret section. You shoot down these enemies, and there's no real strategy behind it, because again, the rocket launcher in Half-Life 2 is interesting. The Combine gunships actually shoot down your rockets. You need to maneuver it around, spiral it. This is just... I'm just shooting. I'm just fucking shooting. And look at this. I came down to the interior of the train to try and see if there's anything interesting that I need to do. Nothing. It's just like closed cabins. Nothing's happening. The soldiers aren't even helping me. I can't shoot through the window. There is nothing down here. So it really is just a turret section, but even worse than one in most games, because you've also got an open area that you just waste your time if you walk through. So what you're actually meant to be doing here is just shoot a fuck ton of gunships, from what I understand. I died a few times because the train just exploded, didn't really understand it. So I went to the main cabin, and then, oh, okay, just loads the next map. That's it. So I'm assuming you needed to kill probably a certain amount of gunships and then go to the cabin. I wouldn't even be surprised if I had to just get the gun and then I could come here and just leave the level. I don't know, man, but it's just, there's no strategy. It's just boring. I mean, I'm being shot by gunships. I don't even need to worry about my health here. Look at this. They're not doing any damage to me. By the way, can I just say that the main character, he looks like a very stereotypical bad anime OC, or like a bad Metal Gear villain. I mean, he's got the long hair and the identical triple scar, like what?
We will live to fight another day. We shall return. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
I never voted for this guy.
Here's another section that they kind of stripped out of Half-Life 2 but just made worse. While you're escaping City 17 in Half-Life 2, you're chased by this gunship, but you have so much cover and you need to like time your navigation, and if you are caught in the open, it does fuck you up. But in this place, I'm just running through this this canal here, being shot up constantly. There's barely any cover, but it doesn't even really matter. Like, the gunship doesn't do much damage to me anyway, so it's just, you're just sprinting through emptiness. I mean, I do kind of like the sight of all these millions of gunships in the sky. I'm not sure how canon that is, like if Valve would ever do that. I don't know if the Combine would ever send such a big fleet like this, but it was a pretty cool spectacle. Look at this guy's mouth, by the way. It's like moving at hyperspeed, like he could be a rap god. I was stuck at this part for about 5 minutes. Just this awful train dinging, and I was like running around killing enemies out of ammo most of the time, trying to get in trains. There's so many trains, trying to open doors. Some doors open, but then nothing happens, like this train here that I got in. Eventually I found out I needed to go to this train where the fucking entrance is hidden behind some trash cans. So after another 2-minute loading screen, we get to this section. Don't really care about the story, not very interesting. We're met with this car. Oh, okay, I'm in the turret, but I can also drive the vehicle. Fine, whatever. I decided to test how much the devs cared about this game and drive into the water. And look at that. I mean, in Half-Life 2, you would have the gravity gun to be able to kind of push your vehicle out of the water, but no, instead the game here just leaves you stranded to run around this fucking gigantic map. So I decided to try and load it because I don't want to deal with this shit. Fortunately for me, the game crashed, and that's where I called it quits. So in conclusion, I was honestly a little bit optimistic to play this, a bit excited. I mean, I didn't expect something glorious from the story or anything like that, but I was expecting the gameplay to not be so bad. It's just, it lacks like basic, fundamental game design stuff. I mean, overwhelming amount of enemies, pretty sure it's infinite most of the times. And just the fact that you can skip that? I mean, that you're meant to skip it. So what, does the developer just hope that you consciously choose how long you want to spend fighting? Like, but then if you're an efficient player, you wouldn't spend any time there because you don't want to drain your ammo. It makes no sense, and the level design is just... The whole game, the best way to sum it up is it's a chore. It really is a chore to play. From the lack of cool set pieces, tedious gameplay, nothing to grip you there. Yeah, it's just... it's bad. So I'm looking forward to the sequel.